Hi, you're muted. Good
Good morning. Hello.
morning.
How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good. I'm doing all right. I'm excited. It's a sunny Monday, and I actually had a good weekend, and I didn't work this weekend, and I got to hang out at the pool, and it was good. So
Oh,
how was your
nice.
weekend?
You know what? We actually went to the pool on Saturday, so that's so funny.
Nice. Yeah, very nice. Very nice. I love today's quote. I just can't wait to dig in. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, oh, this is a good one.
Okay, well,
So
let's do it.
I know, right?
So, our quote today comes to us from Louise Smith, and it is Your intuition knows what to do. The trick is getting your ego to shut up.
Yes. Right?
Yes.
Oh, yes. I am just like, yes, this is exactly yes, I needed to be reminded of this today, recently, always, every day, right? Like seriously, like every day I feel like is Kayla, it's so funny because I think that having these conversations on Monday really helped me realize that the things that I feel on an everyday basis, I'm not alone in.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I'm like listening to this and I'm like, oh, right. How many times am I just like telling that voice in my head, shut up? Like, I don't have time to talk to you right now. This is not, like, I don't need your help right now. Thank you very much. Please have a seat. Um, and I feel like this happens to me over and over, like a lot. A lot.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I read this quote and I think, okay, that means it happens to a lot of people a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that is how the human brain is wired. We've talked about this time and time again, but it bears repeating that we are living in a modern world with a primal brain, and it is here to keep us in our realm of safety and comfort so that we can remain fed and not taken out by a saber-toothed tiger. But here in America in 2025, saber-toothed tigers and eating enough are not really the problems that we are aiming to solve.
Right.
And so that default neural wiring that used to keep us safe and well and alive actually in modern day tends to do the opposite. So it takes a bit more intention to learn to work with it, identify it for what it is, and sit deeper to tap into that quieter, intuitive voice that can actually help us reach our higher goals.
Right? I love that. I love it. I love it. One of the notes that I put here is that really our intention, our intuition is one of our strongest business tools.
Yes.
Right? And it's interesting because I don't think that a lot of us think of it that way, but I have found that to be true over and over and over. So we make decisions all day long, right? Like how we respond to a client, when to push forward on a case, when to lean into I don't want to say confrontation. I want to say
Escalation.
negotiation, escalation, right? These things, we do that. We make these decisions all day, and often, at least for me in my experience, often I know what to do even before I can really explain it. And it's interesting. I've found this has been highlighted even more so since I've been doing some of the boot camp work, and especially like in the billing advocacy mastermind, because I have members that are coming and they're asking questions. Well, Nicole, how do you know when to do this, or how do you know when to do that, or And I am literally, there are times I'm like, I don't know how I know. Like, I think that's where, like, having the mastermind and a place to come talk about it becomes so valuable, because some of it really is intuitive. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you might have the same situation, like the same patient, the same client going through the same situation, but you might handle it very differently
Mm-hmm.
depending on, their particular providers, their particular treatment plan, their particular hospital, or whatever that is. And when we know what to do, when we make a decision and we move forward and we just know what to do, but we can't explain why, I think that's that moment of intuition. You're working
Mm-hmm.
on intuition, right?
Right. And I think part of the challenge with that is, at least in my experience, it really feels like we are in a society that doesn't value intuition, because we're really in a society where if you can't point to the concrete evidence, it's almost like it has to be proven without a shadow of a doubt before it can be considered truth. And
I agree.
that's just not how real life works. And here's the thing about intuition that people miss with that kind of operating framework is that intuition really all it is stored memories of past experiences that you've had, but they don't get stored in language, they get stored in feelings.
Ooh.
And so when a situation arises that has similar data points of a previous situation, how that comes out is a gut feeling.
Mm.
But we can't like quantify and qualify that. And so often it gets dismissed when really that's your brain saying, "Hey, we've seen this before and we know what to do. Trust me."
Right, right, right. I love this. And I do want to say right now that there are scientific and data driven studies that have talked about exactly what you just shared, Kayla. I don't have access to them right now because this is kind of an off the cuff conversation, but I do know that there are studies that talk about what you just explained.
Yeah,
That
it's the memory
feeling,
bank living in the amygdala, and the amygdala does not have its your verbal language is all processed and run by the frontal lobe. The amygdala is that like really primal source of the brain, and I think anybody who's curious about this, I challenge you to dig into the research and let me know. But I think the way it kind of why it occurs that way is um, you can store a lot more in it. It's almost like a zipper file, right? Like if we had the whole the written version of events, like that's a huge file to store. But the brain has learned that we can compress it down into like sets of feelings that get triggered by these things and be able to open up that file again.
love that. Love it. I love that. I love too, because and I think we all do this to a degree, whether we actively practice it, I do think there are moments when we just do it. I can remember years, gosh, decades, a long time ago. A long time ago. I was looking at apartments, and there was an apartment that was in my budget, in the right location, like checked all of the boxes, checked all of the boxes, and I just didn't like it. Like there was literally, I could not explain to you why I didn't like it. I just knew I didn't like it. And I wouldn't move there. And I look back on that and I'm like, oh, that was my intuition. I don't know why I wasn't, I'm like, because I didn't move there. But it always makes me wonder when I think about it, like, what would have happened if I had moved there? Was I going to be unhappy? I don't know. But that was before I really understood this feeling of intuition,
Mm-hmm.
of not being able to explain something. Whereas now, when I can't explain it, I'm like, I just can't explain it, but I'm not doing that. Or I just can't explain it, and I'm going to do this because
Right.
it just seems right to me. And, so I'm going to do it, or I'm whatever. But when we make space for that intuitive decision making, and I think sometimes this happens quickly when we need to make decisions quickly and we don't have time to reminisce or, really like get deep into the logic or the science or the whatever. We need to make the decision in the moment. I think, at least for me, that's when some of this comes forward, is I just make the decision. But every time we practice making that choice intuitively, we're building practices, we're building our muscle of being aligned and effective, right? It's, again, it goes back to this authenticity that we talk about a lot,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know? So I love that. I love sharing that decision about apartments. I often wonder what things have other people done, and I see we've got some folks here. So what things have you done that you can look at now and go, oh, that was an intuitive decision, and how did it work out? Like, I ended up finding a great apartment that I fell in love with, and it was fantastic, and I had a great landlord, and I ended up there for, I think, 3 or 4 years. So I certainly think that I made the right choice about that apartment, turning that other apartment down. But I'd be interested to hear other people's stories about what you made a decision on that was intuitive and how that worked out for you. Because I think most times when we make them, they work out pretty well. But I don't know. What about your experience on that, Kayla?
Yeah, there's very few times where I have leaned into my intuition and regretted it. Actually, none of them are. Nothing's coming to mind for me there. Um, but
Right.
I also wanted to share a moment ago, because you were talking about making decisions under pressure, and I think when you add pressure, timeline, whatever the circumstance is that kind of cranks up the weight of the decision, I think that two things. Number one, it's where it gets even more important to rely on your intuition. But also, number two, when there's that added pressure, I think it can get a little bit more confusing
Mm,
to, when you're leaning one way or the other. Is it your intuition that's pulling you that way, or is it the ego?
this is great. This is good. I love that you just brought this up, because the second point I wrote down is ego often sounds like fear.
Yes.
And so I think that what you're alluding to is, in those moments, there are these voice. It makes me sound a little bit weird, but there's these voices, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times my ego does sound like fear. It'll sound like, Nicole, you're not ready for that. Nicole, what if you fail? What will people think? What will, you know,
And
whereas,
that's honestly that I'm glad that you bring that up, because that's a really great kind of what's that? There's a phrase. Dang, it's escaping me. Litmus test. That's a really great litmus test for, like, where is this side of the decision coming from? Because if you stop and observe that voice in your head, and it is spouting out things of fear of lack, fear of danger, fear of just the uncertainty, fear of putting yourself out there, whatever it may be, that is almost always ego. Because what is ego? I mean, its purpose is ultimately to protect you, but like from everything. Like ego's version of protection is to lock you away in a tower.
that's right. That's right. That's
So I don't
right.
know about you, but that doesn't align with what my soul was put on this world for, which
Right.
that's your intuition speaking, is help you get to your soul's fulfillment. So stopping to pause and observe, is this something that is moving me? It would move me in the direction that I want to be, or is this potential decision, keeping me where I am? That helps to suss out, is it ego, is it intuition, is it fear speaking, or is it an opportunity where you need to feel the fear and do it anyway?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because intuition says things like, it's the mantra in my head that says, ooh, try this. Ooh, this feels right. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
you can do this. This feels okay. And I often, I talk to a lot of advocates that are just, we're building our businesses together is really what it is, right? We have this great community. And I hear this a lot. Like, some days everything feels really good and, super solid in my confidence and my vision and all of the things. And then literally within hours, there will be these, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe I'm all
Mm-hmm.
wrong. And I think that for me, entrepreneurship, building this business has been a constant between ego and intuition.
Oh,
I,
100%.
right? I mean, like every day, all day, it's literally right in the forefront of everything that's happening. Um,
But like
you gotta
that's
know when
just so
to,
human. That's just so
yeah,
human, but entrepreneurship amplifies it. Have you ever done that thing where where like if you say a word over and over again, after
yeah.
like 20 times, the word doesn't even make any sense or mean anything
What does
anymore?
that mean? Yes,
Yeah.
I love that. I love doing that, by the way.
So
That's fun. I think that's fun. I often find in fact, like a couple weeks ago, it was finger, and it was, anyway. So I love that. I love what you're talking about. Carry on.
but just to say that like if you can do that with a word that has been accepted to have a standard meaning in the English language through thousands of years, and you yourself in your own little brain can reduce it to nothingness and meaningless, what do you think that same brain is going to do with any of your dreams or
Right.
ambitions that are way less concrete and more risky,
Right.
XYZ? Like, just
Yes.
just don't do
Yeah.
that. Or if you
Right.
do, recognize that it doesn't mean anything. I just did it in the car the other day. Like, I was sometimes, a lot of times I drive in the car with like podcasts or audiobooks for self-development and stuff. Sometimes I give myself just the quiet space to think, and I was feeling the need for that space the other day. And I was about I was driving home from work, and I was about halfway home, just like thinking about my business. And I was like, God, what am I like? This doesn't even make any sense. Like, what am I doing?
What is this?
Like, who do I think I am? And I was like, you know what? This is not serving me. I am not even walking down that road right now. And just deliberately started thinking of something else.
Yes. I want to talk about that for a minute. Good morning, Sarah. Good morning. I'm going to share your comment in just a second, Sarah, because I think it's pretty good. So, well, I'm going to share it right now because I just forgot what I was going to say. How about this? Sarah says, good morning. Like most things, I think it's a balance between fast and slow thinking. Both have a purpose and have their place. The same with ego, but I definitely prefer removing it in most cases. And if you make what you view as a mistake, learn and move on. I love this. And I do. There's a book, and I think that's what Sarah's referring to. Think fast, go slow, think. Anyway, I can't remember the name of the book, but it's all about this fast and slow thinking. um, Let me know, Sarah, if that's what you're if that's what you're referring to. There's a book about it, but I can't remember. But I agree, it's this constant push and pull. And here's what I wanted to say about what you just shared, Kayla. We actually can direct our thoughts. And this
Mm-hmm.
is something that it took me a long time to truly understand, that I really can. When I don't like what I'm thinking, I can change it.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't just happen. For some reason, I spent a lot of time in my life thinking that my brain just got to do what it wanted to do. And I didn't have any, like, I can't help it. That's what I think, or that's what and that's really not true.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when my ego starts to get in the way, I can ask it to have a seat.
Mm-hmm.
I can ask it to quiet down a little bit and let me continue on thinking about what I wanted to think about, or I can tell it that I'm going to come back to that later if I so choose. But I really do have that ability to,
Mm-hmm.
to change what I'm thinking and just make a decision. I'm not going to think about that anymore. I
Right.
struggle with anxiety sometimes. And so I find that sometimes my brain starts to go in these anxious directions. And I literally have to say to myself, I'm not thinking about that. I'm going to think about, and I have to choose the next thing that I'm
Oh,
going to think about.
absolutely.
Thinking fast and slow. That's what it is. Thank you, Sarah. Thinking Fast and Slow. And that's a fantastic book. You'll love it. I enjoyed it as well. I just couldn't remember the title or the author. Anyway, I love that we can direct our thoughts that way, because when this happens, we have the ability to shift gears and be like, okay, sometimes when I hear my ego saying things like, well, I'm not ready, or it's going to be a disaster, or what are people going to think, I literally like say to myself, that may be true. And I may say that may be true, but I don't have time to think about that right now. Like, it just may be true, but I don't have time to think about it, because right now I got to get this stuff done, and I can't be worried about the outcome right now. And that's the other thing. Well, anyway, I think that's another quote.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I want to take a pause on that and actually kind of go back to our quote for a minute, because
Yeah.
there's one piece of this that I don't like. And again, for our listeners, today's quote is, your intuition knows what to do. The trick is getting your ego to shut up. And I agree with the sentiment, but I feel like there's a way we could phrase it that actually, for me, feels better in my soul. So it's more of the intuition knows what to do, and the trick is getting your ego to just quiet down or sit down. Because we talk a lot about intuition. Literally, this pillar that we're operating under is intuition versus ego, and maybe it's time we rename that, because I've kind of gotten to this sense of, like, when you automatically categorize it as a versus, like, you're creating a power struggle and this like conflict, negative dynamic. And the ego, at the end of the day, the ego is doing its best to make sure we get another day on this life to live. And I really appreciate that. And, one day there might come a time where I am like in a life or death situation, and that fight or flight is going to kick in, and I'm going to really appreciate that. Even though I don't need it most of the days, it's still there doing its job. And I appreciate that. And it's kind of like, we've talked about the ego before as almost being like that toddler that wants ice cream for dinner. Like, in those instances, like, I have a toddler right now. I don't get mad at him when he's, pitching his fit and screaming about his need, because he's doing the best that he can with the tools that he has. And I feel like when we use language like getting your ego to shut up, it's a bit harsh, and it almost is kind of puts you in a place of judgment. And it can be really easy to get judgy about that ego thing that it says with, fear, and you push back because you're like, no, this isn't serving me right now. But I think really, if we can find more of a place of harmony of like, oh, thank you for pointing out those fears, and I'm going to put them right there.
Yeah.
Like, for me, that's been more of my shift lately, is being able to recognize it and also appreciate it for what it's trying to do, and be able to leave it right there and know that it's not serving me. And that has felt a lot more wholesome, I guess, in my mind.
Well, and that makes sense. It makes sense. Oh gosh, we're gonna get here. So there's a theory in therapy that's it's called interfamily IFS, interfamily systems, I think is the way that it's discussed. And it really goes into all of these different parts of us. Oh, this is kind of deep, but that's exactly what it says, is that every part of
Internal
us
family
makes us
systems.
internal. Thank you very much. I couldn't remember what exactly it was, but internal family systems. And this whole idea of every single little part of us, including ego, including intuition, has a seat at the table. And I love what you just said, is acknowledging, because that's how we would do it if we were in some sort of meeting. We would, right, we would acknowledge everybody's input, appreciate what they're bringing to the table, and then continue to make the best choice possible, right? And so I love the way that you described that. And I think that for me, there has been a shift into that arena as well. You heard me saying, thank you. And I just need some space and some time right now to work through this. So I love that. I think acknowledgement is powerful.
And like, I also want to say, like, not only is that helpful for me with my just internal monologue and whatnot, but I think when you start to show up for yourself in that way, it becomes so much easier to show up for others in that way too. And let's be honest, there is a lot of times in our work where we are dealing with people who maybe are in just full ego. I mean, truly, a lot of our clients are dealing with life or death situations, and them and their family members, you know, are probably having the worst times of their lives at points.
Right.
And are not going to be like a calm, rational, regulated human being.
Right.
So it also, by taking care of yourself in this way, helps you to take better care of your clients and be able to respond to their dysregulation with your own regulation and affirmation and thank you for that input. And here's what we are going to do next.
Yes. Yes, 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 yes. I love that. I think I think that's so spot on for, it kind of leads into this next point I had in my notes. This is pretty well. I love this, is that this authenticity that we're talking about requires courage and quiet. And I think that is one of the differentiators between independent patient advocates and system navigation, or folks that are working inside of the healthcare system, is that because we work externally, we're able to get a little bit more quiet, right? And to kind of get into this place of less reacting or performing, and more proactive work. And it really kind of allows us, there's a quote that I use a lot, that's the magic happens in the pause. And what I mean by that is that when we're able to pause, to stop and really recenter and realign, magic can happen. And I think now that we're having this conversation, I think that the reason that works is because in the pause is where we can align with our intuition. And we give ourselves the space to do that. And let's face it, like you said, the system is chaotic, and the system is overburdened and overtaxed. And so working inside of the healthcare system in the United States requires a lot of reaction. And it doesn't allow a lot of time for pause and reflection, and all of the things that I think we as independent advocates have the ability to bring, because of just by nature of how we're doing the work. Anyway, that was kind of an amazing twist on that. I didn't see that one coming, but I think that's a really important thing for us to talk about. And it's also one of the reasons we do this Mindset Monday, right? Is so that we can, I don't know, I think for me, this is a great pause in the beginning of the week to kind of collect and get aware and get my my mindset in a place where I can really lead this, whatever this is that we're moving for the week. Anyway, I think that's a pretty amazing. So thank you for bringing that up. We are running out of time. What are our calls to action this week? What are our challenges for the week? Any ideas? I've got one. What do I have on my notes here? What is one time you knew what to do but almost didn't trust it? What is one time you knew what to do but almost didn't trust it? Wow.
I'd love to hear those stories.
Right? Right? Because I think there's so much power in that. So I will tell a story. Here's one time that I knew what to do, but I almost didn't trust it. I had recently separated and was in the middle of a divorce with my first husband, and I was living in an apartment, and I'd gotten a special for the first year. And when the renewal came up, it was going up, I think $150 or $200 a month. The rent was going up more than I could afford. I could not afford that. That was just not going to happen for me. But I also didn't know where I was going to live, but I knew that I couldn't stay. And so I remember giving my notice to vacate, and I had like 3 weeks to figure out like what I was going to do, but I had no idea where I was going.
Mm-hmm.
No clue where I was going. I just knew that I couldn't stay.
With your son, by the way, let's put that in there.
Oh, yes. Right. Yes. I was not alone. I had my son with me. Yes. Who was in kindergarten at the time. And I was terrified. I think my ego at that time was telling me, just re-sign the lease. You'll figure it out. Right. And I knew that I couldn't do it. Like I knew that wasn't going to happen. And even now I can't really explain to you like why that. I feel that was intuition. But anyway, so I signed the notice to vacate, had no clue where I was going. And within a week had the most adorable little 2-bedroom. By the way, we were in a 1-bedroom apartment because that's all I could afford at the time. And within the week, I had found a 2-bedroom apartment that was 30 miles closer to my work, had a better school system, like all of the things. It was amazing. I'll never forget that experience. And I almost didn't trust signing the notice to vacate because I was afraid.
What a great example of when you say yes to something, you are saying no to everything else. And so if the thing you're saying yes to isn't a hell yeah, you're turning down the possibility that that hell yeah does exist out there somewhere. So are you going to settle for this is good enough and I'll figure it out? Or are you going to open yourself up to the possibility of finding that hell yeah?
I love that, Kayla. I love that. I love that so much. So that's mine. I would love to hear others. What's one time that you knew what to do, but you almost didn't do it? What is that? I would love to hear those stories because I think they're super powerful and they shape who we are, y'all. They really shape who we are and how we do things. Before we go, I'm going to drop a link to the 7 core convictions of independent patient advocacy. I believe that these core convictions can help shape your practice and help you align with yourself and your practice so that you can show up as your very best self for everybody that you serve. So I'm dropping that there. Kayla, any last words?
No. Nope,
okay.
Guess not. I don't know.
That's all right. Totally good. We will be back next Monday with another Mindset Monday. Look forward to seeing you there. And if you get a chance, stop in on Wednesday. We're going to be talking about, what are we talking about? The independent sales script. So if you're looking for how to sell independent patient advocacy, join us on Wednesday. Otherwise, we'll see you right back here next Monday. Have a great week, y'all.
Bye.